this weekend, I attended a school reunion in Stellenbosch, and as we were standing around at the beginning, you know how it is nowadays, if you reach our age, you show each other photographs of your life and your family and so on. And this one friend of mine took his cell phone out and he showed photos. And I must just interrupt. He had his mother-in-law. We actually know her because his wife also went to school the same days as us. And his mother-in-law was a particularly beautiful woman when we were still all young. And now this friend of mine is looking at this picture and he thought he recognized the mother-in-law. And he said to my friend, "Wow, jou skoonma lyk nog baie goed vir haar jare." And this friend of mine reacted. He said, "No, this is my wife." So that's what we're dealing with. We walk behind masks, and I think we're all aged a bit more through stress and whatsoever. And yeah, today with our panel, we just look at how do we counter those things. I think we're all tired of missing out on friends, family, not having a life, of wearing masks, tired of navigating the constant uncertainty. You know, we plan things, but every single thing you plan is, yes, COVID permitting, fourth wave permitting, what all those things is potentially coming. The good news to a certain effect is that if you feel that way, you're not alone. The researchers have actually defined the term as COVID fatigue. And they say it implies a person has reached his or her capacity to cope with experiences, emotional and physical symptoms as a result of constant exposure to pandemic stressors, including social distancing, isolation from family, friends, the fears of contracting COVID, numerous virtual meetings, grief, financial stress, and so much more. The symptoms include exhaustion, physical and mental fatigue, lack of energy, the feeling of just being generally overwhelmed, helplessness, increased irritability, reduced work performance, and a general sense of isolation. We all battle to find life balance, and that's why we've put our panel together. I'm first going to introduce Julie Hollely. She's a psychologist, and she will just have a general intro as regard to the psychological effects and how do we counter that, and trying to find life balance between all of us. So over to you, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, Leigh-Anne, for having me, and good morning, everyone. Okay, so I agree this is such an important conversation to have. I was actually reading some research this morning about that the pandemic has had such a game-changing effect on our mental well-being, as Leigh-Anne was explaining. But research is showing that anxiety and depressive disorders are actually around 30% higher worldwide than what would have been if the pandemic hadn't occurred. And I'm definitely seeing that in my practice. I'm seeing a lot more anxiety and depression. So it's very important for us to address this. It feels like everyone's just been living in survival mode. If I had to ask you who feels like you've been surviving something, whether it's, I'm sure most of you would put up your hand. So whether it's surviving the pandemic, or whether it's surviving a relationship, or financially, or the economy, there's always something at the moment to survive, isn't there? And, we have two systems in our body, and one is our survival mode, and it's called our sympathetic nervous system. And that's designed to help us kick into gear and survive threat. It's not designed for us to live in that mode, but yet because of the constant threat that we've had for the last, since the pandemic started, we've all been living for a prolonged time in that survival mode, in that fight or flight mode. And that becomes very unhealthy, and that leads to burnout, fatigue, depression, and a lack of motivation. So what do we do about it? Well, we need to down-regulate, and we need to shift gears. We need to tap into the other mode, which is our rest and restorative mode, okay? And that is called your parasympathetic nervous system. So if you think of it like, if you drive a manual car, if you think about it like the accelerator and the brake. So your survival mode is your accelerator, and then your rest mode is the brake. Okay, so you can't keep your foot on the accelerator because you'll hit a wall, and emotionally it's like that as well. So how do we then hit the brake? What do we do to help ourselves down-regulate? And when we do that, it will lead to feeling more inspired, having more energy. Okay, so just some basic tips to get you started. The first thing is to be honest with yourself and acknowledge your emotional state. Your emotions are there for a reason. They're sending you a message. So it's important to name your loss. Everyone's losses have been different over the last while. So don't just avoid it. Don't just carry on. Don't just keep pushing. Actually take a moment to name your loss. And don't minimize your loss. Just because someone else may have lost a friend or a family member, it doesn't mean that maybe your financial strain or whatever you're going through isn't important. There's enough empathy for everyone. So name and acknowledge your loss, and sit with that. Okay, when you sit with uncomfortable and difficult emotions, it helps you to learn to adapt. Ultimately, we all need to change. We've all needed to adapt to what's happening. So sitting and acknowledging helps you to adapt ultimately. And then to process and express your loss. So whether that's through talking to someone, crying, screaming into a pillow, exercising, painting, there's a number of avenues, but you need to let that emotion and that energy out, because then it creates space for life-giving emotion. Okay, second tip is become mindful about what you're focusing on. What are you feeding your mind? And there's a lovely quote that says, peace is not based on the circumstances we think about, but the truth we steady our minds on. So are you focusing on everything that you can't control, the chaos around you, the bad news? Or do you have things that you can focus on that feed you hope, like faith? Okay? So important to not get overwhelmed and just look at everything that is chaotic around you, but become mindful of what you are feeding yourself. Okay? Thirdly, connection is so important. But connecting with kindness and empathy, not just to others around you, but to yourself. You're all in sales, and I'm sure that you have a high internal critical voice saying, go, go, go. You should be doing this. You must be doing that. It's all about the target and reaching, and accomplishing the task. But you need to express kindness and that nurturance to yourself as well. When you show kindness and empathy, it actually helps build up release serotonin and oxytocin, which helps you go into that rest and relaxation state. Okay. So one way of being kind to yourself is to implement boundaries. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to be on call 24/7.
Excuse me, I don't know what that sound is distracting us.
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
Maybe
Can we
it's the
carry
mic.
on?
Should I stop with the mic? I can just project. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just talk louder. How's that? Okay. So kindness and setting boundaries, very important. You don't have to say yes to everything. I don't know if yes. Okay.
Thanks.
Hello? There? Better? No feedback. Okay. I'm not sure if I saw the meme somewhere or if someone said it to me, but I thought it was so appropriate. They said, you're not ADT or Atlas, okay? You're not there to rescue everyone 24/7. You actually can switch your phone off at the end of the day. And sometimes we feel so pulled in so many directions, but saying no is important, and it's a way of showing kindness to yourself. Then gratitude, that's also a way of down-regulating. Just taking a moment to think, what am I grateful for this morning? And it can be the smallest thing. It can be the weather, it can be the sunshine. It can be that you had a car to drive here today. It can be that you have a friend or a family member to talk to. But focusing on what you're grateful for helps you to downregulate. And then lastly, the tiny tweaks principle. Okay, so small solutions. When you're navigating a challenging moment, and you don't have capacity for big changes, these things can all sound good in theory, but if you're feeling just exhausted and that you don't have capacity, what tiny small thing can you implement? Because it's very much a domino effect. If you just start with 1 or 2 small things, then that creates a little bit more energy, and then you have a little bit more capacity to do something else, and then it has a knock-on effect. Okay, so I would encourage you, after everyone's spoken and you get some good ideas, to decide and actually have a takeaway today. What 1 or 2 things will you implement, and choose something achievable. So I'm sure there'll be some more discussion later, but things like, even if it's just breathing to calm yourself down, starting your day with a few deep breaths, movement or exercise, laughing, having a coffee with someone, or the gratitude, but choose one thing. Okay, so I'll hand back to you, Leigh-Anne.
Thanks, Julie. Before we go to our next, there's just one question, and then we'll have more of a discussion a bit later. But I think we all have that friend or family member or person close to us who we see is actually really not coping. What do you suggest? How do you react? Because it's also so difficult to barge into someone's life and say you're not coping. Do you have any pointers with regard to how do you help without stepping into over the boundaries?
So, give the person space and give them an ear. Don't come with too many suggestions and ideas and overburden them. Maybe approach them and say, it seems like things are tough right now, I'm here. And then be quiet, I'm here to listen. That's it. Often the kindest thing you can do for someone is to just listen, just be, and realize that you can't solve a lot of their problems. You actually can't solve some of the things that people are going through right now. But you can listen and you can say to them, I'm here. I might not be able to solve it or fix it, but I'm here if you want to talk, if you need a coffee, if you need a dinner, I'm here for you. And then if they're really struggling, then encourage them to ask for help. To see a doctor, psychologist, a counselor, a pastor. Encourage people. I think the stigma is less now, but there has been stigma about reaching out and asking for help. But more and more people are doing that, and it's so important to destigmatize asking for help, because I promise you, I often say this to my clients, but that they're like, oh, I'm coming here, and I say, I know a lot of people that are coming here that you are admiring from the outside, and you think their life is all together, but they're also getting help. So I promise you, you're not alone. Okay.
I think we must switch this off and then move the other mic around. Okay. Can you switch this one off? Sorry, it's just the online audience on here. And then that must move with you.
Okay.
Ons gaan verder. Ek kan net die ene microfoon gee wat net self kan saam praat.
Okay.
Dis for the live stream.
Okay.
Maar dan
we
kan
need
hulle
too much.
verdwyn.
And we're going to have to switch off that because it echoes too much in the room. Because the speakers are sitting behind us, not in front of us.
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
going to ask you to speak with this one and just project it to the back.
I'm done.
That's fine. I prefer this mic.
Okay, yeah, so we'll just ask our speakers to just project their voices. Sorry, that's just the the part of technology, which I think we've all learned and which have been a curveball since the start of online meetings and Zoom and so on. Yes, thank you, Julie. I think we must go on to Magda now and just chat a little bit about eating habits and so on. Personally, I've just found we've really been quite good for a long time. But lately, I think it's part of the fact that the winter just doesn't want to go over. So when I get home nowadays and it's still cold, dan skryp ek daai beskuitblik. And I think we all have our comfort food or our gins or whatever we perhaps shouldn't have. And it's also such a prolonged time of a different socializing, different life. So Magda, let's hear what advice and what ideas you have with regard to eating habits.
Thanks, Leigh-Anne. Thanks for having me here. So I do have a soft voice. Ladies at the back, can you hear me? The mic is for the cyber audience, so not for me, not for us. So can you hear me? Good. So if my volume drops, just wave. Smile and wave. Okay. Right. So Leigh-Anne, like you say, you get home and you just want biscuit. Okay. So I'm going to talk about eating habits, because in that situation you can ask yourself, am I this or am I hungry? Because there's a difference between brain hunger and tummy hunger. So we'll get to that. It's a good thing that you mentioned. Right, and like Judy said, it's to make small changes. And for me, it's always a privilege to talk to people about changing lifestyle and changing eating habits, okay? So I'm sure a lot of you here in the room would go, oh, what diet is she going to talk about? And I'm not going to talk about the diet, okay? So the challenge to you would be not to go now to Dr. Google and to go and look for a diet to follow, okay? Diets don't work. Do you agree? Yeah. Okay, and who's at fault? You or the diet? See, it's a lie. You're not at fault. The diet is at fault. Why? Because it's external messages that you must start to follow. It's external rules. It's not your rules. The food might not be even part of your culture. It might not be in your pantry, or you can't even afford it. But you're going to eat it because Dr. Good will say this is what you should be doing. Okay. So it's actually creating more anxiety. Okay. And that means your cortisol level goes up. That means if you want to lose weight, you're going to battle to lose weight. If you want to be healthier, you're actually not going to be healthier because you're trying to follow something that's not you. Okay. And it might work for a month or two. Think about it. If you buy a TV, if it's not working, what do? You give it back. If a diet doesn't work, what do? You stop because it's your fault. But it's not your fault. It's the diet that's not working for you. The diet, don't look at your lifestyle. They don't know that you have appointments over lunchtime you can't eat, that type of thing. So we as dietitians always look at your lifestyle, your work, and then work around that. So the motivation to change the way you eat shouldn't be from fear, because like I say, that creates more anxiety, and fear has to do with punishment. And you don't want to punish yourself, right? So to be healthier, you have to go home today, this is the challenge, and see why do you want to change? Okay. And hopefully the answer would be from love, out of love. Love for yourself, because you are important. You have to look after yourself. So self-care is important, but also love for your family and then your neighbors, So when it comes from that motivation, it's easier to sustain it than when it comes from fear. Okay. So look at that. And if I talk about eating habits, it's why are you eating? Okay? Are you hungry, or are you just bored or frustration? And like Judy said, an emotion is a message. So if you come home and you want to eat, because it was a long day, you missed lunch, you missed everything, so you're actually ravenous as well, then you can eat because you're ravenous. But if you come home and you're just frustrated and the day was just not good and you start to eat, that's wrong. You must look at why are you frustrated and rather try to manage that and then if you want to lose weight, you will actually lose weight because you're eating for the right reasons, okay? So it boils down to planning. You come first. It is important to plan. So planning your shopping list, the menu for the week, and also look at your diary for the next day. So see when your appointments are. So if you know it's a lunchtime appointment, make sure you eat something just before lunch, even though you're not hungry at that point, but you don't want to come out of the appointment and then you're ravenous and then the apple in the bag is not going to do it. You want the takeout, you know. So it's about planning the next day. And I always say, plan your diary, so your appointments, around your meal times, in the sense of first plan your meal time, then the appointment. So if you look at my diary, 12 o'clock or 12:30, I do not see clients. That's when I eat, okay? Because to talk all day about food, that will punish myself, be punishment. No, I can't eat because I must see a patient who wants to come in their lunchtime, okay? So luckily, mine is 12 and not 1, because most people's lunchtime is 1 o'clock, okay? But eat when you're hungry, that is crucial, okay? But that's a whole story for another day, because sometimes you're not hungry, and there's reasons for that. So in my sessions, I actually look at hunger, okay? Because hunger, if you think about it, is actually another message. Your body is telling you that you're ready for food. But now you're on this diet, and the diet said, oh, no, I can't eat now. I must wait another 2 hours. So you punish yourself. But your body is actually ready for food. And whatever you consume then, your body will use for energy because it asks for it, okay? So that's one thing, is to eat when you're hungry. Another habit is, how are you eating? Is it on the run? Is it fast? Most of you are performers, so most of you are eating fast, okay? Or if not, if you were in a hostel, you learned that habit, or the army, you eat fast, otherwise you don't have food. Okay, so that's a habit. So it's to slow down. Like Julie said, you have to down-regulate, and this is one of the things to do. A way to do it is to actually eat slowly. So by chewing your food slower, that's when digestion starts. So your body can release all the good enzymes and it can actually digest your food. So you sit with less colon issues. Okay, so it's to eat slowly. So you chew your food, put the cutlery down, don't chew it 20 times, that's a diet rule. So you just chew your food and enjoy it, get satisfaction from it. You swallow it and then only you take the next bite, whilst you're listening to nice, calm music, not doof-doof, because then you're going to race again, okay? And if you're a fast eater, be kind to yourself, like Julie said, because it can take up to a year to get it right, to eat slowly. Max 2 years. So slow down, breathe, okay? So that will help. So you eat slowly, and when you eat slowly, you can listen to another message that your body will give you, and that is fullness. Your body will tell you it had enough, and then you stop. Because the moment you eat beyond that point, your body will say, hey, I did give you a message, but you didn't listen, so let me store this as fat. Okay? So it's really to listen to what your body is actually saying, because then you are in control, and the diet is not controlling you. You control everything. You feel better, you have more energy because you're eating in the right times, you're eating slowly, you're happier because you're actually enjoying your food. So that is part of how to change your eating habits. So it's to eat regular, eat slowly, stop when you're full, listen to your body, but it all starts with planning, because if you don't plan the right foods to be in the house, you can't eat properly anyway. Okay, so the challenge out there is, why should you change? And how are you going to change your eating habits?
So lunch is not the time to answer your emails whilst you...
No.
whilst you eating. Yeah, I think it's all these small habits, and ultimately just to have a better quality of life as well, because it is nice to sit at the table and eat nice food, but as you say, it takes some planning and to be kind to ourselves. Then the difficult part, Leigh-Anne, I think we can still work with eating slower and eating a bit less and planning a bit, but for many of us to get from a point of being sedentary to actually starting our exercise routine. Leigh-Anne is a physiotherapist and also a Pilates instructor, and she will hopefully get us moving. Thanks, Leigh-Anne.
Okay, thanks Rian for the opportunity and for the intro. Just have to correct Rian, sorry, I'm not a physiotherapist. I do work with one, but I'm a Pilates teacher. So that is what my background is. We're talking about health and wellness and mindfulness and getting motivated when we've struggled through COVID and we all are suffering from COVID fatigue. So when we look at that, we want to know, what is health and wellness? It's a term that is used so often, but do we really understand it? So in short, health is a state of being. So our health is our physical or body, what we are, how we look maybe. It is also our mental state, so our mind, what we think and how kind we are to ourselves. But it's also about our spiritual or soul, okay? Then, when we look at wellness, wellness is the art of living a healthy lifestyle. And by living this healthy lifestyle, it's going to affect our physical, mental, and social or spiritual sides. So then, how do we get going when, like Rian says, we're sedentary, we work behind our desk all the time, clients don't want show-arounds anymore, they want virtual show-arounds. So all of that activity that we're so used to getting is not there anymore. How do we motivate ourselves when we have no enthusiasm or we're lackluster, just no energy? And like Julie said, it's the small steps. So we start with small steps and small things that we can do daily and consistently. And what do I mean? Because we all think about exercise as gym. I must run, I must go to the gym, I must lift. And it really doesn't need to be about that. When we're so focused on working and we're online and behind the desk, really we just need to get up from the desk, walk around a little bit more, take the lunch break, take the loo break, because I can tell you that most of you will not go to the toilet because your clients or your online meeting is going on, right? Take the time out for yourself and get moving. Then the next thing we can do is get outside, get into the fresh air and spend some time in nature. It will also force us to walk a little bit more and be mindful. When we say mindful or mindfulness, what is that? It's being present for yourself. So you can start to listen to the inner voices, the unkind words that you're saying. We want to let those go away. We don't need them. We're so critical about ourselves that we need to start to think a little bit more positively and a little bit more kind of with empathy and kindness to ourselves. Now, people would expect me to talk about goals or goal setting, but I don't think that in this present time it will work well. And the reason being, because we all want to perform well, we have this added pressure of doing and performing so much. Why do we want to add extra pressure onto our lives when we're so stressed? Why do we need to go and run 10Ks? To prove what? So take small steps and do small things now, and then set the goals later. There's a few things that you can put in place that can kind of help with the exercise or the movement to kind of be a little bit more there for a friend if you find that someone is a little bit low. And these are them and can be done right now. Find something that you love doing. We are more likely to go back and do that one thing if we enjoy it and find happiness in it. So if that means going to a dance class or trying karate or judo when we haven't ever done it before, then that's what you need to go and do. We need to move our bodies. Remember, exercise or activity, as we're talking about, isn't just running or gym. It's moving the body and increasing our heart rate. If we can increase our heart rate, we're going to get the benefits from our exercise. You work your mind or your mental capacity, and you're therefore there more present for yourself and more mindful. Right, so I have to have some notes. Then find a friend to join you. And this is where it comes in that you can help someone that you feel is a little bit low or struggling. Find someone. Get that person to join you for a walk or a run if you really want, whatever with that person. And if you can't find a friend, you need to pay a training coach, okay? The reason why, you're either going to be invested in your friendship and helping that person or helping yourself, or you've invested financially in a person. You're not going to cancel. Then, this one I think is really tough for us. It's about setting meetings for yourself with yourself. You as agents are continually setting meetings with clients that want to sell or buy, that are your financial kind of security, right? You would never cancel on them last minute or change last minute. Why do you think it's okay that you do that to yourself? You are all just as important as your clients. And I want you to really think about that. Because if you do not look after your body, your physical state, your mind or mental state, or your spiritual side, you cannot perform or provide a service for that client that will keep them happy. And then there's no financial security for you, right? You lose the sale because of your inability to help and be present. So we all have that excuse to cancel because work is so important. I want you to remember and use a mantra. I am just as important. So wake up every morning and kind of repeat that to yourself. And it gives you that kindness to yourself and gives you kind of that option to say no and set boundaries. So 3 steps that you can easily take and put in place. And just one thing, on the meeting, it doesn't have to be long. It's 5 minutes, right? Even if it's 5 minutes to sit and breathe mindfully, it's 5 minutes that you've taken out for yourself. Then the last thing, we talk about exercise, and yes, it's important, but we need to focus on ourselves in a 3-dimensional manner, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And then remember that once we've got this all going, there's a positive spin on our health and wellness. If we feel better, okay, if we move more and do more activity, we're going to feel better. And if we feel better, we're going to want to do more. And the more we do, the more energy we're going to get, the more we're going to want to work and be productive, right? And then for Magda, we're going to want to start to eat healthily because we feel so well. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, thanks, Leigh-Anne. We unfortunately, I just want to have one question for you. We're now at that age, I don't know if you all realized, you come to a point in your life where you go to a dinner party, and then by the time you get home and you're in the car on the way back, you realize that half of the conversations was about health. This one needs a knee replacement, and that one's got a back problem, and it's just absolutely horrendous. And when I say to Henri, flip it, 10 years ago and 20 years ago, health wasn't even a topic of discussion, and now suddenly everybody's got some ache somewhere. Julie, you only turned 40 the other day. This is all waiting for you.
I had back surgery 2 months ago.
Okay. So, Leigh-Anne, are there ways to exercise and to accommodate and make amends for the fact that at our age there are physical issues with regard to exercise?
Ooh. Look, it's all about listening to the body, okay? So if there is something going on, if the knee aches or the back aches, one, I always suggest to my people or my clients, you need to go and just make sure that there's nothing serious going on, all right? Is it just an ache because that is your way of your body telling you you're stressed? Like, I have backache. Like, that's my stressor. So if I'm stressed, my back hurts, right? So, and then the other thing is find someone that's going to train with you that knows a little bit about the body. There's so many people out there, or so many trainers that kind of just go hell for leather, right? But find someone that understands you and then will work with you, especially if you have those ailments, right? And just remember, it's an aging process. It does happen, okay? But we've just got to be a little bit more positive about it. It's not a death sentence, really, in the whole exercise thing. Okay.
Thanks. Yes, I've got one or two more questions, but I think let's open it to the floor. Are there any particular questions you've got for one of our panel people? And then perhaps if whilst you think of one or two questions, Julia, I can ask you, are there any things you've heard our other panelists say where you want to add on to or...
Yes, I think planning is such a great thing, and I think, Magda, you were saying about setting your appointments around, to make sure that you actually have a lunch break as well. And I do a similar thing, but from a mental health and emotional perspective. So, I could set back-to-back appointments very easily, but what I do is I have a 15-minute break between each client that I see, and I find that I'm far more efficient in my sessions and appointments because I have 15 minutes to just gather my thoughts, breathe a little bit, process, what happened, how I'm feeling about it, and then I can go into my next appointment and be able to give 100% to my next client. So it depends on your value system, I could book back-to-back easily, but I've set a boundary in place to protect my own mental and emotional well-being, because then that ensures my sustainability. Whereas if I drive myself into the ground and work back-to-back all day, then I'm going to have to take, a month off of burnout anyway. So it's about making those decisions on a day-to-day basis, taking care of yourself. And I know, it sounds so simple, but I deal with clients as well. I've said, can you take a 5-minute lunch break? And some people say no. They actually say no, and I can't believe it, but start where you're at. If you can't take an hour lunch break, what can you do? Can you stand up from your desk? Can you walk around your desk? Can you take 2 minutes? What can you do? Start with something.
Yes, something I've also found just on a personal level is that people we are seeing in our office for transfers and so on are all dealing with a lot at present. Personal loss, often financial loss and so on. So I found if I'm more kind to myself and I allow a bit more time for those appointments, I'm less stressed, and ultimately I can implant and mean a bit more for those clients as well. Perhaps that's also in your environment. People don't come to you because they've got a problem, but just to have, if you're less stressed, you can actually add more value to that person's life, which they will remember and which will ultimately come back in positive feedback for you as agents as well. Are there any questions at this point? Yes, there, Monique.
I've got a question for you. What is the latest time that you should eat at night so that it's still healthy or not perfectly tired?
Okay. So the question is, what is the latest you should be eating before you go to bed? Okay, so again, there's lots of diet rules. You must finish by 6, or you must finish by 7, but what if you work until 6? Then what then, So the general guideline is 2 hours before you go to bed, you should be done with your meal. Yeah, if it's possible.
Any other questions?
Talk to me about this intermittent fasting thing.
Okay, so what do you want? So the question is intermittent fasting?
I mean, is it worth doing? Is it something that you recommend doing? I mean, it's just everybody's intermittent fasting. I don't do it myself.
Okay.
But I want to know more about it.
Right, so intermittent fasting, you get different ways of doing it. There's good and bad things about it. So the research, because we can only advise what research is saying. So the research shows that it is positive. So it's good to do it. However, what I have against that is that whole thing, if you can only eat by 12, but 9 o'clock you are starving. then you're punishing yourself. So then that's not for you. So that's the issue I have with intermittent fasting. I also had a client who did it for 2 years, still doing it, but now he's presenting with high cholesterol because he's training very hard. So he's eating at 12, 1 o'clock, but it's not enough food. So then he goes for the biltong and the chips and the chocolates, which increase cholesterol. So now he sits with a health problem. So he's happy with his weight, but now there's cholesterol. So that's the problem I have it. So it works well in people who are not breakfast eaters. And there's a lot of people there that's battling with that. But then again, if you have 5 cups of coffee before 10 o'clock, you're not going to be hungry. So it's to give yourself food, nutrition, before you just down the coffee. So I hope that answer. So there's pros and cons, so it depends what works for you. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So we're all ready to go.
Andy, are there any questions from our audience? Or,
I'm asking them.
okay, we'll just see if our audience... No, it's funny what you just said, because we grew up, I don't know if the rest of you, but in Afrikaanse huishoudings, we were all told, ontbyt is die belangrikste ete van die dag. Our parents placed an incredible emphasis on us having decent breakfast and not skipping breakfast.
Yeah.
So there is actually science which says it's not that important for everybody. Is that the answer? Yes.
So is that a fact? You don't actually need that breakfast to fuel your day, even though you haven't eaten since the night before.
Okay, so you need breakfast. Okay, so here's the scenario. So let's say you wake up and you're not hungry. Always question your body. Why is your body not giving you this message? It could mean that you either had your supper too late, or it was early enough, but it was a huge supper, or you comfort eat at night while watching your series. So because you had so much calories in that time while watching series, when you wake up the next morning, you're not hungry, then that's a problem. Because the problem is not the fact that you don't want breakfast. The problem is the snacking the night before.
The funniest thing is with me, I notice, is that if I have a huge meal the night before, I am ravenous when I wake up.
So it depends what type of meal that was. So if it was a heavy carb-based meal, there's more influx of insulin, and then you will be more hungry the next morning. But if you have a huge steak, you might not be that hungry. So it depends what you had to eat. Yeah, but I still promote breakfast. Breakfast is important. If you think about being a car, you can't just go off and work with no fuel in your body. You're going to battle to concentrate. You get irritated. You just won't feel yourself. You'll be grumpy. So you need fuel. So sometimes it's actually just good to force yourself to have something, even if it's just an apple or yogurt or a handful of nuts. Or an avo, just something to get going. And then you can have a bigger meal at tea time, Some people actually do it. They swap their breakfast and mid-morning snack around, and that works for them. But you need energy, yeah.
Do you have any questions, Leigh-Anne? Julia, a question for you. I find that a lot of people have got into this bad habit of binge watching soapies and binge watching Netflix. I think it's because our social life looks so different for a long time. We were used to having dinner appointments and going out and functions and theatre. Obviously, it's not great, and I suppose it's a habit we should start breaking. What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, definitely. So without the connection and the usual social connection that we've had, we're still craving connection, and we're still craving what we get from connection. So then we go to, well, what's the next best thing? If we can't go out, if we can't socialize, let's just, watch TV, series, and then we binge. But then it's actually not fulfilling. I mean, I'm sure all of you, you feel, you've watched it, but you don't feel that joy as as if you were interacting with others. So you have to start setting limits, okay? Especially in the evenings as well, because it also affects your sleep. And I'm sure you know about screen time and that, but it's activating your frontal lobe as well. It's not giving you the desired feeling. So the serotonin, the dopamine, the oxytocin, all those neurochemicals that we get from connection. That's why I said one of my tips is be mindful of, what you're putting in. Draw a boundary. You actually have to say no. You have to set a limit for yourself and then say, okay, how can I get what it is that I'm actually looking for, and you can start connecting now. We're on level 1, so you actually have to start stepping out and doing those things again to engage. Yeah.
There's one question from the floor as well. If you after that, it's what's the best time of the day to exercise? Okay.
Perhaps you can just add to that and then we'll put that question to
okay. Sorry, Julie just triggered a thought here about sleeping. Now, this is also very interesting because you need serotonin to sleep and to keep on sleeping. So you might fall asleep, but you might wake up if there's not enough serotonin. So did you know that 80% of your serotonin is sitting in your gut? So at the moment, I'm focusing with my clients a lot on gut health because your brain is also connected to your gut through the vagus nerve. We just spoke about it before this time. And if your gut is not sending the right signals to your brain, it's harder to lose weight, anxiety goes up, depression gets worse, your risk for heart problems goes up, and you battle to sleep as well. So healthy eating starts by eating the right food for your gut. Okay, that's what I wanted to add to that one.
Okay, so what is the best time to start do exercise? There's lots of thoughts about this, but I think when we look at ourselves right now, we need to think about where's the motivation and what are we going to do? Like when we've had a long day, are we really going to think about putting on our clothes to go out for a walk? We're probably going to go and get the blikkie biscuits and eat a biscuit or binge watch a series if we haven't put in place these boundaries. So for me, I would always suggest first thing in the morning, if you can, it's setting that meeting for yourself, just get it done and then you can get your day on the go. And if that isn't possible, then lunchtime, because I think the later we leave it, the less likely we are to do it. I think that is just now in this time. Yeah. And I think also, I want to add to what to do in the evening. If we're sitting there listening or watching series, isn't this a good time just to do a down kind of regulating, maybe some stretch work, maybe find a meditation or easy sleeping listening app that we have? There are loads of them out there that will just help you to kind of switch off from the day and be a little bit more mindful. And then you can just start to get yourself ready for sleep. Okay.
I've always wondered, so maybe you can help here. Do you believe in a specific diet for blood groups?
No.
No.
Okay, so that's a straight answer, sorry. It's yes or no. So if you look at the history, how they got to this, it's actually about swing and pendulum, and it's just not, yeah. So again, I had patients who would be, say, the O group, and they eat a lot of meat, and they end up with kidney stones and high cholesterol. So it's all about balance. And I like to use this example. If you think about all the food groups, they're more or less the same portions. Not exactly, but I mean, fruit and veg must make out a big part of your diet. So is starch, a little bit less protein, and you need your good fat still, and your dairy. So if you transform each group into the shape of a ball, they're more or less the same size, okay? Now think of a juggler. A juggler will be able to juggle all those balls. But let's say you're taking a food group out, carbs, that's usually the first thing to go, and you replace it with more protein. So you take that ball away from the juggler, and you replace it with a Pilates ball. He's not going to juggle. The same with your body. Your body needs balance. So that's why healthy eating is good. Balance. It's all about balance. And yes, the biscuit, the chocolate, the chips, that's part of balance.
Absolutely.
We're not perfect.
Is the wine
Yes.
I always
So,
say it's
yes.
a fruit group, but that's just my
So the question is one part? Yes. Because I also promote the Mediterranean way of eating, and wine is part of that. However, it's not empty calories, okay? So just to put it out there, like half a glass of wine is like eating a slice of bread with butter on. Okay. So it's part of it, but everything in moderation. So not Pilates ball versus, moderation.
What would your ideal breakfast lunch and supper look like?
Mine or that balance. So that's now, let's say you're not a cereal eater, okay? Also not a serial killer, hey? So you don't like cereals and porridges. Then alternative to that would be, say, for instance, a good whole grain piece of toast with smashed avo on, with some onion, tomato, egg, baked beans. Okay? If you're not a bread eater, then you just take the bread away and you have baked beans, egg, avo, and like a tomato, onion relish with it, with lots of garlic. Okay? If you like your cereals, then, or I don't like cereals, but that's not, it's processed. So oats would be a good thing to eat instead of that. Yeah. Then a good lunch, it all depends what you are, if you're vegetarian or just balanced. But let's say you're just eating healthily, you're looking for a starch. So let's say you don't want to have a sandwich, which is not wrong. I always say, if you like bread, eat your bread, but just make sure it's low GI and balanced. So the bread will be your starch, the good fat could be the avo mashed onto it, and then you can have a bit of tuna mashed as well, or mixed with the avo, or some chicken, or egg mayo sandwich, but there must be salad as well, like tomato, cucumber, lettuce. It doesn't have to be a separate salad, it can be on the bread. So you have a nice big sandwich. Or you can change that fillings and put it into a wrap or into a pita, okay? Or you can have, say, couscous, because that's quick and easy. So I think couscous, starch, protein can be chicken. If you're vegetarian, it can be chickpeas. And then you can have avo. Avo is good, actually, yeah, it's part of the Mediterranean way. Or then olive oil or macadamia oil or olives. And butternut and baby marrows and onion. So that could be a nice lunch. And then supper, you're looking half the plate covered with veg. Okay. Quarter of the plate with starch. So whether that's now sweet potato, corn, or legumes again. And the other quarter would be your meat. So that's the size of your hand, palm. Let me just show you like this. Hand palm size, but not hand palm size. As thick as the side of your hand. Okay. Moderation. And then a good fat again. So olive oil or avos or olives that you drizzle over the food. So balanced meal, which you will eat at the table slowly and enjoying every bite. Stop when you're full.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's still a lot to be discussed, but I'm mindful of the time and also our audience. So we just at this point want to do our lucky draws. Tia, you can come forward in the meantime. Andre's just getting the list with the people who are on Zoom. Yeah, and thank you so much. And I would encourage each one of you to just make that one or two small changes. Don't wait for 31 December to write down your New Year's resolutions. Let's do it now, and then we can hit the ground running in January. And on that note, also just again, Tia, thank you so much. OOBA is generously contributing to these free Wednesday mornings. They're always willing to assist. They're there for the agents. Please assist them from your side by sending your business their way as well. They're always there, and I promise you they give excellent service.
Thank you so much, Rian. Appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Just in person.
The first one is in person. Alison Brousseau. Okay, just
Ek is seker jy gaan van die hou.
The good calories. And then the next one is on Zoom. I'm sure Nikki might want to fetch it on her behalf. Denise Gillian. Thank you. And then the next one in person, Marguerite Rice. Thank you. And then an online one, Teresa Roux. We will make sure that will go to her. And then in person, Chelsea. Okay. And then one more one. Anne-Marie Lloyd. Wow, that office is just actually so lucky. I promise you it's not jinx, it's just how it worked out. Yeah, thank you for our audience who's taken out the time. We will let you have their contact details if you want to be in touch with any one of them professionally. They're all there to render a service to the Port Elizabeth community. Thank you for taking time out. We also specifically thank our online audience for joining us. And the ones of you who can't be with us there next week, please join us. It will be our last meeting with Lynette Beer. And I'm sure you will end up encouraged and ready for the last section of the year. Thank you again. Die invoice details die. Baie dankie. Goed gegaan.